Welcome to the BXG Podcast, the podcast where pop culture and nerd culture meet.
You think it's just going to be barbecue sauce?
Because if you actually read those books, it's just gobbledygook.
I really think clothes should be mandatory.
Speaking of Star Wars,
Captain America.
trailer reaction video. And they were all Willow.
Copyright.
Greg Filson. Willow, episode 7, the penultimate episode, was a long one.
Oh,
So it was. And the party arrives at the Shattered Sea, and they have to traverse the Shattered Sea to get to the city of... And at the city of... is Eric. Kit's brother,
Kit.
who has been trapped by the crone and poisoned by rusty water. I mean,
They'll do it,
right? I mean, I feel like
Mhm.
lead pipes,
You don't want that.
fall of the Roman Empire, some said. Deterioration of the quality of soldier based on the lead poisoning over time. Podcast for another day. That's on our history pod.
Yeah,
Obviously.
check out the history card. Yeah.
We should do one episode where we do just pick like one thing from history and break it down.
I'd love to do that.
And then never call attention to that episode ever again.
I mean, I love that idea.
It's like,
You
this
pick
is the
topic, I'll
episode.
dive in.
Yeah. It's like, this is the episode on like Russian agriculture in the 18th century. And we just break that down and then never speak of it ever again.
Like PhD level thesis on it.
Yeah.
And then we just never.
Right.
I like it.
So anyway, Eric has
It'll be for our Patreon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Once every month, you'll get a standalone history episode. Subscribe at patreon.com. We don't have a Patreon. So they go, and there's some fighting, there's some training, and then there's the ends of the earth. There's a cliff that we have to dive into. And then Eric comes out. He's got a new haircut, thank God. And he's looking combative. And that's where the cliffhanger for this penultimate episode kind of left off with. This is what I'll say about this episode. I actually liked it, but it was way too long. Way too long.
It was definitely way too long. And so that hurt it for me. I did watch this differently because you had mentioned it being more of like young adult. And so I watched it through my young adult lenses that you put on, you do it.
Yeah, we wear many hats here at the BXG.
Yeah, and I will say that I enjoyed it more looking at it like that, because it was just like, basically it's A to M to Z. There are those, it's not just A to Z. Right. There's that break in the middle, and then like, let's make out. Right? Yeah. I mean, it was that. And it was like, so it was like a lot easier for me to consume this looking through it that way, because it was kind of that. It's, if you read a young adult book, like Harry Potter, but slightly more advanced, I would say, because it's, it's in that realm of like teenagers. There is that where it's like, it's not directly A to Z. You'll get to Z, but there's a stop somewhere. And then there's also like, we have to have our romantic involvements.
Right.
That
and because
may
it's
not
Disney and we're in a new age,
yeah,
we would prefer those involvements to be either LGBTQ or different races. Or if you can get both in there, that's great. And I don't have a problem with that at all, even a little bit. It's just that these projects have become inundated with that type of content to the point where now it feels so over the top and unnatural. Versus
I was gonna say forced was
forced. It feels forced, and I think that, and I've said this many times throughout different conversations, that when it becomes when you have diversity for the sake of diversity, then it's just disingenuous. It needs to be natural. And I don't care that Kit and Jade have a lesbian relationship. That's fine. Good for the characters, right? I mean, good. And I do think that there is something that to be said for the inclusion of those story arcs, in the sense that it does normalize those. I don't even want to say those behaviors because it makes it sound like ugh, but like it normalizes those relationships, which I do think need to be normalized.
Sure.
But it just becomes to a point, especially within the Disney sphere of things, that it's just like, okay, this is just one of the boxes that we have to check.
And that was going to be my next thing is, while I like this episode more, it was so much, you literally, I don't know if you're in my head. It was like that time where Ty somehow was in our text conversation with us and I didn't know what to do. You're in my head right there, right? I was gonna say, I felt like someone was going through, like a page was off to the side and just checking off.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, guy and girl relationship. Yep. Mentor, Yoda, that kind of thing. It was like the Yoda apprentice, check. The not hetero relationship, check. Right. A little long intro into the brother. There was that, because that took forever. That was like 3.5 minutes of them just still like going through dirt and like, or what, not dirt, but like going through like the sand, and that was like way too long. And it's like really building up to something that I understand is important, but the buildup made it seem like it was going to be just absolutely completely insane. And then it's just like, okay, it's a brother, which is good. So there's definitely some issues. And I think it's right. I think it's that Disney problem. And whenever we talked about this, we previewed it. I definitely was really high on it. I need to understand that things are Disneyfied.
Yeah.
That's on me. So I will say the problems with this show that I have are actually probably more of my problem than the show's actual problems. Which the show still has its problems, but I also have to be like, I'm watching Disney here and I'm not watching.
Well, it's
A24. Make something.
Yeah, right. And I do think that you kind of hit the nail on the head with, like, this is very much just Harry Potter with swords in terms of like thematically. I know I'm gonna get an angry text message about this as well, just like the thing from John. But I've read the full Harry Potter series front to back 2 times. I've seen all the movies multiple times. Harry Potter's awesome. Harry Potter's not the one of a kind thing that everybody makes it out to be. It's sure. It's literally Star Wars. Okay. It's like, okay, you have the chosen one and somebody's trying to kill him because he's the chosen one. How many times has that story been told, man?
There's a whole thing in it. I think it's either Shakespeare or it's derived from Shakespeare. That there's only seven stories. It's Spielberg. There's only 7 stories that can be told.
Right. And it's like the whole chosen one thing. And that's what this is. I mean, it is the chosen one story. It is Harry Potter. It is Star Wars. It is,
this is George Lucas.
Percy Jackson. Well, it is George Lucas.
Right.
I mean, he wrote it. Well, the original, but
right. Yeah. Based off of his characters.
So outside of the whole, okay, we got to check these boxes thing, and the length of the episode was a problem for me. Because I was like, okay, they got to be getting close, right? And then I'd pause to see how much time was left in the episode. I'm like, 20 minutes, fucking hell.
Yeah, and when I hit that same point, I was like, what?
But with that being said, I thought that the training montage was really well done. And I really liked
it. Looked cool.
Really, really liked the visuals of the Shattered Sea, where it was like, okay, it's the sea, but it's only this deep. And so they're out training and fighting in it. And I thought the visuals of both the Willow and Elora training with like the their wands and their magic was really cool to look at. And I felt like the hand-to-hand training scenes between Jit and Cade, Kit and Jade were also very well done. And then obviously culminated in their kind of confession towards each other and their romance. The other scene that I thought looked really, really cool was the scene where Kit and Elora in the water with like the stars in space around them. That looked really freaking dope.
Oh yeah,
that was
cool.
I thought that was super awesome. And then just as we've said now for the last several weeks, like Boorman is just Jack Sparrow. Mm-hmm. And there's really no getting around that. Graydon's basically Ron Weasley, just with more handsome. And, you know, these characters are all just different versions of characters that came before them, basically.
Right.
But
and that's, you know, that's also young adult books, you know, in general too, where there's many different, you know, there's Divergent, there's, you know, all the sites where it's like, and they're still good. I'm not saying that it takes away from them being good books.
Sure.
It's just you have to appeal to different people and different, like some people like fantasy more than sci-fi. And so you use that storyline you would use in this for a sci-fi kid, or use it for a fantasy kid, or not any of those things, just everyday people kind of thing. Well, and that's what works.
Let me ask you this question on the book side of thing. I'm going to describe a book for you. Okay. You tell me what book you think it is. Okay. The Chosen One is taken to a school and trained to lead the forces of good in a battle against evil. Go.
I mean, honestly, the first thing is just Harry Potter.
Wrong. It was Ender's Game.
Right. Right.
So there.
Yeah. Right.
But that's what you know, these
but
Harry
that's
Potter
fine. Like, that's
is
literally
Percy
fine.
Jackson, is Ender Wiggins, is, you know, the list go
the
on.
thing about like books like Percy Jackson too is that gets kids into mythology, which is cool. Like, and so and that's all, like, I think all that's fine. I think this is one of those shows, like, I bet there's 13-year-olds out there that are just like, this is really cool. Like, and this might get them into other things and stuff like that, which I think is awesome.
That's probably to a certain extent the intent with this was, you know, mom or dad, probably dad, was like, oh man, I freaking love this movie in the 80s. Val Kilmer, hell yeah. And now there's a series for it. Come on, son, you should check this, or daughter, you should check this out, because I loved this thing back then and you're going to love this. And then they do like it because that's who it's geared towards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's something to share. And it's Disney, you know, we're making memories out here.
They know what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. Percy Jackson gets kids into mythology. Like you said, Harry Potter gets kids into Satan worship. So there's that. And transphobia, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, J.K. Rowling's is just,
I mean, she's not good, but
some people need to
stop
books are good. Saying things.
It's one of those things where, like, if you're her, it just shut up.
Right.
Why talk?
Right. Well, Orson Scott Card too, man.
Yo, he's just really weird.
The internet was bad to Uncle Orson.
Yeah. Whew.
Because he's got some really good. I mean, the Ender series and the Shadow series and the Speaker for the Dead series are all really great science fiction, but he is a weirdo.
Yeah, you know what? If you got a lot of money and you made some good books, just shut your mouth.
Just don't say anything. Keep writing.
Yep, that's smart. Yeah. It's just boom.
Which brings us to our bi-weekly George R.R. Martin segment. He said, what did he say recently? He was like, I would love to write a book in this series, but not till Winds of Winter is finished, of course. It's like, well, what stopped you from doing sidetracks before, George?
And there was also a report that like some Game of Thrones project was
Were
derailed.
shelved. Yeah, that they're
Yeah,
shelved.
shelved. It's
due to
like,
the
yeah, I wonder what
HBO.
that was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
So,
that book.
yeah, it was that book.
Here's
He
how
had to write
long
the
it's
other series.
taken. Here's how long it's taken and will continue to take for him to write The Winds of Winter. By the time he's written it, there will have been enough time passed that they can just reboot that series.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And also just a little preview of what could happen. Though great in theory, the emancipation of the serfs caused headaches for landowner and peasants alike. Landowners kept about 2/3 of their land for themselves, and the land allocated to the newly freed peasantry was of the poorest quality. Without the serfs, many former landlords experienced a decrease in agriculture production. Some of them even had to sell their land to remain financially afloat.
And what we're really talking about here is the czars. You know, you've got Vlad, you've got Ivan, Peter the Great, Catherine the Great. If you're just joining us, welcome back to History with the BXG Podcast. We tonight are discussing the Tsars of Russia. I have behind me here the last Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II, overthrown by the Bolsheviks, Anastasia, that whole thing. And so we're going to have a little chat tonight about Russian agriculture around the turn of the 19th century, leading into the First World War. I guess that would be the 20th century. I apologize. BCE, before Common Era. CE, now Common Era.
To help serfs buy land from their landlords, the government instituted a practice of redemption payments, through which the government compensated the landlords for the land. In return, the serfs had to pay back the government in 49 yearly installments.
This is no joke. I actually just learned this. The other day, that the Russians and like the Soviets didn't I learned this from a video game podcast. So remember, kids, video games will teach you things. But
lessons can be learned from anywhere.
From anywhere. That's right. The Russians, like because of like the whole Soviets and the Bolsheviks and all that, did not they didn't have the Gregorian calendar until like the early 20th century.
Yeah.
And so they would just be like, oh, we screwed up counting. We got to take 3 weeks off and just not count time.
That's awesome. Time doesn't exist anyhow. So
yeah, it's a flat circle, as we all know.
I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're looking.
We charge like $400 for a Patreon episode.
Get on some like real life scholars.
Oligarchs.
Some oligarchs.
Yeah.
They're not oligarchs. They're just it's a pleasure pontoon.
Yeah.
It's not a yacht.